You're listening to the Wrestle Havoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes. This is the Wrestle Havoc Podcast.
Impact Wrestling is no longer Impact Wrestling. The era of Impact Wrestling is over. Long live TNA. Impact Wrestling, of course, has changed their name back to where it all began, back in June of 2002 at the Asylum in Nashville, Tennessee. Of course, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling is back with their Hard To Kill pay-per-view. Hard To Kill. That is a very, very, very appropriate name to name a pay-per-view based off of TNA, because TNA is hard to kill. TNA has gone through a lot of trials and tribulations throughout the years, and it all started really in the beginning. Of course, there was a lot of people who didn't even think that, TNA was going to last 5 months, and then lo and behold, well over 20 years later, TNA Wrestling is back, and they had over 1,000 people at the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is very different for me, mainly because of the fact that I do not cover Impact Wrestling. The last time I covered an Impact pay-per-view was Rebellion 2021, and that was the show where Kenny Omega faced off against Rich Swann. At the time, Kenny Omega was the AEW World Champion, and of course, they were doing the whole belt collector gimmick with Kenny Omega, and that was where Kenny Omega beat Rich Swann, and he won the Impact World Championship. So he had the AEW, AAA, and Impact and TNA World titles. Yeah, TNA. After that, I didn't really watch a lot of Impact Wrestling. I've been keeping tabs on Impact Wrestling for a little bit, but I didn't really follow Impact Wrestling on like a strict level. I didn't follow Impact Wrestling a lot because I had a lot of other important stuff that I had to do. Mainly this channel and other stuff in my life. But I heard a lot of great things about Impact Wrestling. They be delivering good stories. They would deliver good stories, and they deliver great professional wrestling. But, of course, all eyes this past October won Bound for Glory, and everybody coming out of that show was talking about one of two things. The Will Ospreay and Mike Bailey match, which was absolutely tremendous. One of the best matches of 2023, Mike Bailey versus Will Ospreay. And the announcement that Impact Wrestling made at the end of their Bound for Glory pay-per-view, which is basically their biggest show of the year. They announced that TNA Wrestling was going to come back. And that caught the eye of fans like me. What do I mean by fans like me? Fans that do not follow Impact Wrestling, but fans that followed TNA. TNA, in my opinion, and this is just me talking right here, TNA to me holds a special place in my heart. I came into TNA well late, like really late, around Aces and Eights. Like when Aces and Eights were running roughshod all over TNA, that was when I got into TNA. I was flipping through the channels. I landed on Spike TV, and they were airing TNA Impact, or at the time Impact Wrestling. It was Impact Wrestling, but it was still TNA. And Bully Ray was the TNA World Champion, and it was very interesting. I'm one of the very few people that actually think that the Aces and Eights storyline was pretty dope. I know a lot of people do not like that storyline. But usually in my case, when I get into something new, and this is the case with anything that I do, I usually look at the history of that particular thing that I want to get into. So I can remember I would always, I would hear friends of mine back in third grade talk about TNA, all this stuff, but I didn't really pay attention. I would watch TNA, I'd watch Impact Wrestling on Spike when, I came in way too late because they got canceled off of Spike back in 2014 based off of their own doings. But, TNA, it was different. Now, granted, this was during the time when Hulk Hogan came in and all that stuff, but As I've stated earlier, I tend to look back. When I get into something new, I always want to know the history of it first. And I would go to their YouTube channel and I'd watch a lot of these old matches that happened in TNA. One that comes to mind, and I know a lot of people are going to say the Unbreakable 3-Way, AJ, Joe, and Christopher Daniels at Unbreakable 2005, arguably the greatest TNA match of all time. That wasn't really the first match that really got me into TNA. There were two matches that got me into TNA that I went back and watched when I first got into TNA back in 2013, 2014. And that was the Ultimate X match from Bound for Glory 2009, where Amazing Red was defending his X title, and that was where famously Christopher Daniels fell damn near on his neck, and he didn't even break his neck during that Ultimate X match. And Turning Point 2004, Triple X versus America's Most Wanted inside Six Sides of Steel. The Triple X versus America's Most Wanted match, or AMW, at Turning Point 2004, in my opinion, is arguably the greatest match, in my opinion, in TNA history. That match was off the freaking charts. If you guys haven't, and you guys should already, but if you guys haven't checked out Triple X versus America's Most Wanted, I definitely recommend you give yourselves a watch. But TNA holds a special place in my heart. I came into TNA way too late in the game. They got canceled off of Spike. They went to Destination America, then Pop TV. Around 2016, I kind of faded off of TNA. And once the Broken Hardys started to become the hottest thing in wrestling, I kind of hopped right back in. And then after they left TNA, I was like, okay, I'm done with TNA. TNA has had a lot of trials and tribulations throughout the years. You know, they had a lot of trials and tribulations, a shit ton of name changes. They were originally NWA TNA, then just TNA. Well, really, it was just TNA, but, you know, with the NWA, you know, they had access to the NWA titles. Then they became Impact Wrestling. The show became Impact Wrestling, but the company was still TNA. And then once Anthem bought it, TNA, the name TNA was such a tainted brand. TNA at the time, back in 2016, 2015, 2016, 2017, those were the dark years. This is when they were on Destination America. They were moving from network to network. Dixie Carter, you know, everybody, TNA was just losing money left and right. They couldn't pay their talent on time. It was just a shit show when it came to TNA. They became Impact Wrestling, and then the whole GFW merger, and then that was a whole debacle, and then they became Impact Wrestling again. And once again, they had become TNA. But the thing about it is when they announced this past October that they were going to revert back to TNA, it caught my attention. Because Impact Wrestling, you know, even though I haven't followed the product, more and more people on social media were constantly telling fans like me, hey, man, give Impact Wrestling a shot. Give Impact Wrestling a chance. I think you might like it. Because it's not the same company as it was when Dixie Carter was running the company. Because when Dixie Carter was running the company, she had Vince Russo. Trust me, it was a shit show. You know, they secretly hired Vince Russo. That let him off the Spike, all that stuff. But it caught my attention with TNA. As I stated earlier, TNA holds a special place in my heart. And it holds a special place in a lot of fans' hearts. Because TNA was the promotion that introduced us to a lot of the stars that we see today. Guys like AJ Styles, guys like Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe currently right now is the AEW World Champion. And people say, oh, he's an ex-WWE guy. To me, he's not an ex-WWE guy, even though he was in the WWE. To me, he's an ex-ROH/TNA guy. I prefer him more of an ex-TNA guy. Even though he was in ROH first, I prefer him as an ex-TNA guy because that was the first time I was introduced to Samoa Joe in TNA. TNA's highest pay-per-view buy rate was Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle in November of 2006, Genesis. I have a TNA Destination X 2006 poster right there. I got a TNA Turning Point. You guys can't see it, but I got a TNA Turning Point 2005 poster with Team 3D, of course. Brother Ray, Brother Devon, that was what they went by in TNA. I have a crap ton of TNA DVDs. Yes, I still have DVDs. I don't care. And I have a replica of the Wildcat TNA World Heavyweight Championship, which is the belt that was used from 2011 to like 2017. So that was the one that Bully Ray had, the one that Austin Aries won, that TNA World title. But TNA holds a special place in my heart because it was something different. You know, everybody refers to AEW as the alternative. At this stage of the game, I don't really view AEW as much as an alternative as I viewed AEW as the alternative in year 1, year 2, and year 3. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because AEW has grown so much. Think about this. They have grown so much within, their 5 years of existence that, to me, they're not considered an alternative anymore. They're considered one of the major leagues in professional wrestling. They are currently the number 2 entity, and they will forever be the number 2 entity, and a damn good number 2 entity. Even though there's still, some problems going on behind the scenes, they are the number 2 entity. When TNA was first announced that it was going to be coming back, you had a lot of people on the internet wrestling community space, the Twitter realm of professional wrestling, say that, TNA is going to replace AEW as the number 2 promotion. That is a lie. An absolute lie. They are not going to replace AEW as the number 2 promotion, because AEW has way more resources. I mean, WWE has the most resources out of all of them, but AEW has way more resources than TNA. I'm sorry. Even though Anthem has a shit ton of money, the Khan family they have 10 times the more money than Anthem. And that's just a fact. But I always refer to TNA, and I tweeted this out the day that they made the announcement that TNA Wrestling was coming back, that TNA equals the original alternative. Before there was an AEW, there was TNA. During a time when WWE monopolized the industry, back in 2001, once they purchased WCW, once ECW went bankrupt, I believe they purchased the assets of ECW, 2 years later, but ECW went under roughly around the same time WCW went under. 2001, if you were a pro wrestler, it was the worst time for you, because you only had one option in the United States, and that was WWE. If you wanted to make money elsewhere in professional wrestling, you'd either have to go to Japan or probably go somewhere else, maybe like Mexico, wherever. TNA started in 2002. And as I've stated earlier, TNA has had a lot of trial and tribulation. Back in 2017, when they distanced themselves from TNA, TNA was such a damaged brand. So damaged that just nobody even wanted to mention the name TNA. Fast forward to 2023, when Impact Wrestling announced that TNA was going to be making its return, everybody was so happy, including myself, because the past was the past. Impact Wrestling has done a wonderful job. Anthem has done a wonderful job to really distance themselves from the really bad stigma that the company has had throughout its history. When they were even on Spike, like when they brought in Hogan, that's when things started to really go down. Vince Russo was one of the reasons. Dixie Carter, she did not know how to run a wrestling company. When they lost Spike, that was where things really got bad. They lost AJ. They wanted to cut AJ Styles' pay like in half. It was really bad. Anthem has done a really good job throughout the years that they have, owned Impact Wrestling to really remove that negative stigma that TNA had. And now, once TNA Wrestling is back, everybody doesn't view TNA Wrestling as like, LOL TNA anymore. Everybody views TNA as a legitimate alternative to not only WWE, but also AEW as well. TNA was the original alternative. And they're now, once again, the alternative to both WWE and AEW. I refer to AEW as the alternative, and they technically still are. But they have grown so much in the past 5 years that I don't really view them as an alternative anymore. They're a mainstay in professional wrestling at this point. TNA is that new alternative. But yeah, that's my little almost damn near 20 minutes just talking about TNA. Hard to Kill. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I don't follow Impact Wrestling. The last time I covered an Impact pay-per-view was Rebellion 2021. That was when Kenny faced off against Rich Swann for the Impact World title, where Kenny won the Impact World title, and then, of course, he reigned as the belt collector. That was the last time I covered an Impact review. I've been keeping tabs a little bit on Impact Wrestling. I remember watching Slammiversary 2022. That was where they, did a lot of the classic TNA stuff. I kept tabs on TNA. But a lot of people on social media have been really praising Impact Wrestling for a lot of the work that they have done. And it shows. It really shows. And, with TNA, with Hard to Kill, bear with me here when I go through all of these matches. I'm not going to be familiar with a lot of the stuff that has been going on throughout the past couple of months. But thankfully, the good thing about this show was, if you really think about it, I don't want to call this a reset, but this is a brand new era. This is a brand new era in the 20-plus year history of TNA. And I thought this was a very good kickoff. And after this pay-per-view concluded, I am definitely going to watch the Snake Eyes show because that card looks stacked. We got Nic Nemeth. Yes, Nic Nemeth, by the way, the former Dolph Ziggler in WWE, is now a part of Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. Of course, he made his New Japan Pro Wrestling debut at Wrestle Kingdom a couple of days ago, and now he is a part of TNA, and he is setting his sights on Moose, who is the brand new TNA World Champion. We got Nic Nemeth taking on Zachary Wentz, of course, the former Nash Carter from MSK and NXT. Of course, he's currently a part of the Rascalz with Trey Miguel. He's going to be facing Zachary Wentz tomorrow at the Snake Eyes show. We got Will Ospreay versus Josh Alexander. They wrestled, I believe, last month or 2 months ago. But man, I'm excited for that match as well. We're going to get Okada on that show. Vikingo is going to be on that show. Snake Eyes is going to be a great show. I'm definitely excited for that. But am I going to cover Snake Eyes? I probably don't think I'm going to cover Snake Eyes because I'm planning on covering Collision tomorrow. If I cover Collision, I'll have to wait and see where my scheduling is. But nonetheless, this Hard to Kill show was awesome. Was this show perfect? No, it was not perfect. I'll talk about the imperfections on this show. Production-wise, there was a couple of issues with the show. Dana Brooke, yes, Dana Brooke is now officially part of TNA, and I didn't really care as much. They were really teasing it as a big deal, and then once they showed her, I was like, wait, is that Dana Brooke? Okay, whatever. But nonetheless, I thought this show was great. I think the Hard to Kill show was awesome. The crowd, the presentation, even though it was really, if you think about it, there was not really presentation changes when it came to this show. Of course, TNA or Impact at the time, Anthem was saying, there's going to be a lot of production changes and a lot of production upgrades when it comes to TNA and all that stuff. There wasn't really a lot of changes. I mean, they did add the tunnel. That is great. But it looked like a normal Impact Wrestling show with just the TNA logos on it, if you really think about it. It kind of just looked like a normal Impact Wrestling show. But that is just me. I dig that presentation anyway, so I have no problem with it. There's no six-sided ring, unfortunately. Of course, the six-sided ring is what made TNA what it is. I know Eric Bischoff absolutely hated the six-sided ring, but in my opinion, the six-sided ring was what really got me hooked into TNA. Just the fact that a ring was shaped like a hexagon was badass. Yes, I know, I understand, safety first when it comes to the talent, but I wish we had the six-sided ring, but it is what it is. I don't mind. People need to understand, TNA did not start with the six-sided ring. TNA actually started with the normal four-sided ring for their first 3 years of existence when they were at the Asylum. But yeah, those are my just initial thoughts on TNA as a whole and the Hard to Kill show. Before we get into all this craziness regarding TNA Wrestling's Hard to Kill, please make sure to like and subscribe to the Wrestle Havoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And, as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, follow me on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. I'm going to be uploading a lot of TikToks and a lot of YouTube shorts from this review and also from the SmackDown review, so be on the lookout for those as well. Of course, I recently uploaded the SmackDown review. If you guys haven't checked out the SmackDown review, you guys can go to my channel and watch it. But without any further ado, let's talk about TNA Wrestling's Hard to Kill. As Barry Scott would say, a brave new world emerges. You guys get what I meant, right? R.I.P. Barry Scott. But our first match of the evening, we have a Knockouts Ultimate X match. Ultimate X is one of my favorite concepts of TNA. One thing that I loved about TNA so much is their unique match types. They had matches like Feast or Fired, which, if you really think about it, it's kind of similar to Money in the Bank in a sense, or their Option C option. If you guys do not know, Option C, basically, if you hold the X Division title, you can cash in for a world title shot. that was option C. That was basically a knockoff of Money in the Bank. Feast or Fired is kind of similar to Money in the Bank, but one of those briefcases has a pink slip on it, and you get fired. In kayfabe, of course. Ultimate X, 6 sides of steel, King of the Mountain. Even though I think King of the Mountain is a little cheesy, it's still unique with TNA. Ultimate X, in my opinion, out of all the different match types that TNA has created, I think Ultimate X is the best one. Ultimate X is just badass on all levels, man. I can remember P.D. Williams versus AJ Styles versus Chris Sabin. Speaking of Chris Sabin, he was actually on this show defending his X Division title for the X Division title at Final Resolution in 2005. But moving on, we got the Knockouts Ultimate X match. We got Tasha Steelz, Giselle Shaw, Alicia Edwards, Jody Threat, Danny Luna, and Xia Brookside. I'm not really familiar with most of these talents. I am familiar with Tasha Steelz. Yeah, she was in a tag team with Kiera Hogan, but I'm not really familiar with the rest of these talents, so bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. So everybody tries to climb the scaffolding. Of course, the goal of the Ultimate X match is basically there's a big red X at the top, and there's steel cable. There's no ladders at all. There's no ladders. The wrestlers have to climb the scaffolding and basically hang on to the steel cable in order to grab that X without using any ladders whatsoever. Again, a very unique match type. I love it. We got a drop kick by Brookside, followed by a head scissors by Luna, and then Threat comes in. She picks up Brookside, but then Luna hits a drop kick. Tasha Steelz comes in, but then Giselle Shaw comes in. She takes out Brookside. After that, Jody Threat comes in. After that, she hits a clothesline on Shaw, but then she hits the double knees, or Threat hits the double knees on Luna and Shaw. Luna then hits the fall-away slam, but then we get the sliding lariat. Danny Luna then goes for a tope on Giselle Shaw. After that, Brookside is on the top. She takes out Shaw and Luna on the outside. Meanwhile, Jody Threat climbs up the Ultimate X, but instead hits a cannonball, taking out everybody on the outside. A cannonball senton, basically. After that, Jody Threat climbs up the scaffolding once again, but Alicia Edwards is on the back of Threat. She's back on the shoulders of Threat, which is freaking awesome. Then Edwards gets taken out. Tasha Steelz comes in and she drops down Threat, but then meanwhile, everybody is slowly coming back to the ring. Tasha Steelz and Edwards are both on the top rope. Danny Luna and multiple other women come in, and then we get the Tower of Doom taking down all wrestlers. Meanwhile, Brookside is climbing the scaffolding, but then Shaw gets hit with the powerbomb. Xia then is on the cable, but then she gets hit with the powerbomb by Luna. Then we get Luna and Threat fighting it out. After that, Danny Luna suplexes Tasha Steelz and Jody Threat. After that, Alicia Edwards is climbing the Ultimate X. She's on the cable. And after that, Luna is up on her shoulders, but then Edwards counters with a DDT. Edwards then grabs a kendo stick, and she hits that kendo stick on everybody. And then Xia Brookside comes in with the double knees. Then Shaw goes for the super kick, but then Luna comes in with the lariat. Jody Threat comes in, she picks up Brookside, and then she has both Edwards and Brookside up on her shoulders, and she drops both women down. We then get a tornado DDT by Tasha Steelz, and then we get a high kick by Shaw. Threat is hanging on the cable, but then Luna spears Threat, off the cables, which was freaking awesome to see. There's always crazy high spots when it comes to an Ultimate X match. Luna, Steel, and Shaw are all hanging on the cables. They're trying to grab the big red X, but Luna gets taken down. Steel gets taken down, and Giselle Shaw gets the X. She drops down, and she wins the Women's Ultimate X match. I believe this is the second ever Women's Ultimate X match in TNA/Impact's history. And she is now the brand new #1 contender for Trinity's Knockouts title. At the time, Trinity's Knockouts title, but Trinity right now is no longer the TNA Knockouts champion. That goes to Jordynne Grace. Jordynne Grace, of course, she cashed in her Call Your Shot trophy, and she challenged Trinity on the show, and she won the Knockouts title. Overall, I thought this was a great Ultimate X match again. This is the second ever Women's Ultimate X match, I believe. But nonetheless, this was a great match. I enjoyed it. Great opener. A lot of crazy maneuvers happening in Ultimate X. It's basically what you would expect off of an Ultimate X match, basically. So that is great to see. In our next match, we got the French-Canadian Frankenstein, PCO, to take on Dirty Dango. If you guys do not know who Dirty Dango, you might as well remember Fandango. Not Fandango, Fandango. Remember back in 2013 when Fandango was the most over guy in the company, or one of the most over guys in the company? It's crazy times. People would get over for no reason. People in WWE would get over and like they would punish them because they got over on their own. But Dirty Dango, he cuts his promo and says, "Man, do I hate TNA Wrestling." That's his new motto. I'm not familiar with this current Dirty Dango character, but it's pretty interesting. You know, it's not my cup of tea, but it's interesting. PCO comes out. He comes out to an elaborate entrance, and the match starts. Dango's in control in the beginning, but then PCO sends him to the outside, and then PCO hits a tope cannonball on the outside. He sends Dango back into the ring, but then PCO goes up to the top, but then Alpha Bravo comes in. Of course, he accompanied with Dirty Dango, and he interferes in the match. He interfered in the match, and of course, after that caused a DQ. Alpha Bravo and Vladimir Kozlov, a.k.a. Oleg Prettius, I think that's his name in Impact. I'm just going to call him Vladimir Kozlov because that's how I know him as. But they attack PCO, and what happens? Who comes out? The Man Beast. Yes, the Man Beast Rhino comes out, which leads to all of the heels to retreat. And then Santino Marella. Yes, Santino Marella, Cobra. Y'all remember the Cobra? Oh my God, good times. Director of Authority, Santino Marella. He's the current Director of Authority of TNA. He says, "You think this is the first time back as TNA he will let it go like this? If you say no, you are right, because he has the power. This is going to become a tag team match. And if they think they were born yesterday, it's not going to be a 2-on-2 match. It's going to be a 3-on-3 match. And their partner is Jake something. Jake something. I am not familiar with Jake something. Bear with me. I apologize. But a brawl breaks loose. PCO climbs up the top rope. He hits his moonsault, which is called the PC moonsault, or the PCO salt, on the outside. After that, PCO goes to the top. He hits a cannonball on Dirty Dango. Jake something tags in. We get a series of clotheslines by Jake something, and then he hits repeated clotheslines. Rhino tags in. We get a bunch of gore chants by the crowd, and then we get a chop by Rhino, and then he spears through Dango into the corner, but then Alpha Bravo is the legal man. He works on Rhino. Vladimir Kozlov tags in, but then he works on Rhino. Rhino tries to fight back, but then Alpha Bravo once again is the legal man. Dango then tags in. He goes to the top, and then he misses a knee drop. Jake something then tags in. He hits a right hand. PCO tags in, and then he clotheslines Bravo, and then we get a back elbow by Bravo. PCO goes to the top. He hits a leg drop. Rhino's the legal man, but then Vladimir and Rhino face off. We get repeated right hands by Rhino, and then we get a shoulder tackle by Vladimir by Rhino. Dango interferes, and then after that, Rhino throws down Dango, and then Rhino gores Bravo when Dango ducks, because Dango, or Dirty Dango, is a dickhead. After that, Jake something hits a powerbomb. PCO goes to the top. He hits the PCO salt, and we get a cover, and the baby faces get the win. This kind of reminded me of some of the goofiness that TNA used to do back in the day. That was not really my cup of tea, but it wasn't a bad match. I love the fact that Rhino was on here. I always love when he hits the gore. But this wasn't a bad match. PCO is pretty entertaining to watch. I think he's the definition of a pure character. I'll tell you that right now. PCO is very interesting. Moving on, we got the Knockouts Tag Team titles. MK Ultra, of course, Killer Kelly and Masha Slamovich will take on mystery opponents for their TNA Knockouts Tag Team titles. Yes, they have women's tag team titles in TNA. They even had, back during the prime years of TNA, once they introduced the Knockouts division back in 2007, I believe it was like a year or two later where they introduced Knockouts tag titles. But their mystery opponents, the lights go out. It's Decay. Yes, Decay, Rosemary, and Havoc. I 100% remember Decay when Crazy Steve and Abyss were a part of that group and they were feuding with the Broken Hardys. I remember that. That is my favorite version of Decay. But we're not going to be talking about the Hardys because apparently there's some sort of controversy going on right now with Matt Hardy and his wife Rebby that is taken all over social media, which is absolutely hilarious. But moving on. It's Rosemary and Havoc. The match starts. Decay is dominating. We get a German suplex by Rosemary. Killer Kelly, I believe it was Killer Kelly or Masha Slamovich, ends up going for a double stomp off the top rope. We get a cover by Kelly and a near fall. MK Ultra, which is the tag team name, is in control. We get the PK. After that, we get a cover into near fall. We get a running pump kick by Killer Kelly. Kelly gets in her face, but Rosemary, this was awesome. So Killer Kelly basically gets in the face of Rosemary, who was laying down on the mat, but then Rosemary, all of a sudden doing her supernatural stuff, gets up in her face, and she immediately goes after Kelly, hitting rights and lefts. Both women exchange strikes. Havoc tags in. She works on Masha Slamovich, and then we get a headbutt by Havoc. Havoc then tries to go for the double choke slam, but then MK Ultra counter. But then Havoc goes for the double clothesline. That's copyright infringement, by the way. You're stealing that from Adam Cole and MJF. Havoc then goes for the double suplex. After that, Masha drops down Havoc, but then we get a cover into 1 count. MK Ultra gang up on Havoc, but then Havoc hits the double choke slam. And then Decay go for the double team, and then we get a cover, and Decay are your new TNA Knockouts champions. I thought this was a pretty short match. I believe this wasn't actually on the card. I believe they put this match at last minute. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was what I heard, what the commentator stated. But nonetheless, I like Decay. I love Rosemary. I'm a big fan of Rosemary. I loved her work when she was doing stuff with Matt Hardy and, the whole Decay versus Broken Hardy's feud. It was great stuff. And I'm glad that she's still doing stuff with Decay, and I'm glad that she's teaming with Havoc. Of course, they're one of the best tag teams right now in TNA's Knockouts division. Moving on, Steve Macklin is in a backstage interview. Of course, he got the win over Rich Swann, and he says he got the very first win in this new era of TNA, and he claimed that TNA is his, and it's his area of operation. You want a new era? Welcome to the new era of mayhem in TNA. He's a former Impact World Champion, I believe. Moving on, we got TNA President Scott D'Amore. Scott D'Amore says he's excited about their partnership with the NFL Alumni Health Association. The AAA CEO comes in, and he shows a video package highlighting the best of TNA and highlighting the best of AAA Lucha Libre, which basically confirms that TNA and AAA is in partnerships with one another. So AAA and TNA are in an official partnership. Then after that, he welcomes us to the first pay-per-view of TNA. He thanks Scott for inviting him, and he talks about how they're going to be bringing more Lucha Libre to America, and he thanks TNA for being great partners, and he makes it official by signing the contract. Now here's one match that I was definitely looking forward to. And of course, that was the three-way match for the X Division Championship. Chris Sabin, one of the TNA originals, the current TNA X Division champion. 41 years old, Chris Sabin. Chris Sabin, 41 years old, is the X Division champion. He defends his title against Kushida and one of the best luchadors in the world, El Hijo del Vikingo, of course, the current and I believe the longest reigning AAA Mega Champion in AAA history. This match was freaking awesome. I loved this match. Of course, for those of you who are not familiar with TNA, and mostly if you guys are watching this video, you guys should be familiar with TNA. One of the things that really got everybody hooked into TNA was the X Division. Of course, they always had that motto, it's not about weight limits, it's about no limits. And that was exactly what they showed in this match with Chris Sabin, Kushida, and Vikingo. This match was off the frickin' charts. It was high spots all over the place, but at the same time, there was a lot of technical ability. But there was more high spots in the tag team match than there was this. But for the amount of time that all three men had in this match definitely 100% got the job done. So let's go through this match. We get a bunch of TNA chants by the crowd. All three men lock up. Everyone gives each other arm drags. Vikingo is on the apron. Sabin is on the apron as well, but then Kushida ends up going for a hamstring kick on both men. Kushida then hits a senton on the outside. We get a kick by Kushida, and then we get a thrust kick by Vikingo. Vikingo goes for the head scissors, and then we get a spinning kick by Kushida. And then we get the enziguri by Kushida by Vikingo. He goes to the top rope. Vikingo goes for an inverted flip into an Hurricane Rana, which was absolutely amazing. Vikingo is out of this world. Then after that, Sabin enters the fray. Sabin ends up going for a German suplex on Vikingo, and then on Kushida. Sabin then catches Vikingo into an STF submission, and then Kushida hits the cartwheel dropkick. Then after that, we get an inverted atomic drop by Chris Sabin. Sabin then ties everybody into a submission, but then we get a chop by Sabin. We get a boot by Kushida. Kushida then catches the second boot. And then we get the hammerlock suplex by Kushida on Sabin. And then, of course, monkey flip countered into a Hurricane Rana by Vikingo, which was insane. And then we get the twisting head scissors by Vikingo. Vikingo goes to the top. He hits a moonsault on everybody on the outside. He sends Sabin into the ring. He goes to the top. He ends up hitting a shotgun dropkick. Kushida then off the top hits a flying senton. And then Sabin hits the crossbody. And then everybody counters one another's moves. After that, everybody is down, but then Sabin ends up hitting the tornado DDT on Kushida. And then he takes Vikingo, and then Sabin plants him down. Sabin then sends Kushida to the outside, but then Vikingo ends up going for a spinning kick on Chris Sabin. After that, he picks up Sabin, and then he drives his knee on Sabin's face. Sabin is on the ramp, and this is when Vikingo does his crazy Vikingo shit. Vikingo ends up hitting a 450, leaping from the second rope over the top rope onto the ramp on Chris Sabin. And we get a cover by Vikingo back into the ring and a near fall. Vikingo goes to the top, but then Kushida comes in. Kushida goes to the top, and then, of course, he tries to go for the hoverboard lock, but he plants Vikingo down. Sabin comes in with the super kick. Kushida goes for the roll-up, and then we get a near fall. Once again, we get the hoverboard lock by Kushida, but Vikingo hits the double stomp on Kushida off the top. Both men, that being Sabin and Vikingo, exchange strikes. We get the overhand shot by Vikingo. Vikingo is on the ramp, but then Sabin ends up going for a springboard Canadian Destroyer over the top rope on the ramp. Canadian Destroyer. Shout out to my boy Petey Williams, man. The greatest move. The greatest, as Don West would say in the glory days of TNA, the greatest finishing move in the history of professional wrestling. The Canadian Destroyer. I know the Canadian Destroyer gets overdone a lot nowadays. I get it. It's like the DDT. It's like a lot of other moves that get overused nowadays. But the Canadian Destroyer, to me, is still a sick-looking move. Sabin is on the top rope. Kushida's on the top. Sabin escapes, but then Sabin comes back and drops Kushida with the German suplex off the top. Sabin then picks up Kushida and applies the hoverboard lock, but then Sabin still manages to hit the Cradle Shock, which is his finishing move. And we get a cover. 1, 2, 3. And Chris Sabin retains the TNA Wrestling X Division Championship. Overall, this was exactly what I wanted this match to be. Everything about this match was action-packed. Everything what the X Division is defined as. It's not about weight limits. It's about no limits. I know Eric Bischoff is probably pissed off that I said that, but who gives a shit? That is what the X Division is all about. The X Division is exactly what you saw in this three-way match. Chris Sabin doing crazy stuff, Kushida doing crazy stuff, and Vikingo, guys like Vikingo, doing crazy stuff. That Canadian Destroyer on the ramp, insane. That 450 on the ramp, insane. That is the pure definition of what an X Division title match needs to be. And Chris Sabin is still your TNA X Division champion. Of course, Chris Sabin, one half of one of the best tag teams in TNA history. Everybody talks about, America's Most Wanted, Triple X, Beer Money, Team 3D. Some people would even put the Naturals on there. Y'all remember the Naturals? Yeah, neither do I. But, yeah, man. The Motor City Machine Guns. Of course, Chris Sabin, one half of the Motor City Machine Guns, along with the current TNA World Champion, or the former, I should say, TNA World Champion, Alex Shelley. Moving on. We got the Walking Weapon, Josh Alexander, taking on Alex Hammerstone. Yes, Alex Hammerstone. I've seen a couple of Alex Hammerstone stuff. I'm not really that familiar with Alex Hammerstone, to be honest with you. I know he's had a long run in MLW. Like, if you're talking about Alex Hammerstone, everybody's like just talking about him, from, the stuff that he did in MLW. I believe he's a former MLW world champion. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe he is a former MLW world champion. And I believe currently he is a free agent. I'm actually going through Fightful right now to see if there's any reports on Alex Hammerstone. I do believe that he's currently a free agent. But if there's anything coming out of this match that I came up with, like, you know, in my head, I think TNA should sign a guy like Alex Hammerstone. I think he'd fit like a glove in TNA. You know, he'd fit well in AEW as well, and he'd fit perfectly in WWE as well. But honestly, for a guy like Alex Hammerstone, perfect for TNA in my opinion. Just perfect. He fits the mold. But the crowd is split, either chanting Walking Weapon or Hammerstone. Both men lock up. We get an overhand shot by Alexander. Then Hammerstone hits right hand, knocking him down. Then after that, Josh Alexander gets taken to the outside. Hammerstone flies over the top rope on the outside. And then we get a kick by Josh Alexander onto the leg of Hammerstone. Then Josh wrenches his ankle. After that, Josh fights off Hammerstone, but then Hammerstone misses a chop. After that, Josh Alexander hits the Dragon Screw. And then he proceeds to work on the ankle of Hammerstone, but then we get repeated boots by Hammerstone. And then he drives his knees on Hammerstone. We then get a chop by Josh Alexander into the corner. And then he goes for a second, third, fourth, and then a fifth chop. Hammerstone says Josh into the corner and ends up hitting a belly-to-belly suplex. We get a waist lock by Josh Alexander, followed by a right hand. Alex picks up Josh Alexander, but then Josh is on the apron. Josh picks up Hammerstone, and then after that, he drops him down on the apron. And then we get a running crossbody by Josh Alexander. He sends Hammerstone back into the ring, but then he picks up Hammerstone. He rolls through with a senton. After that, he goes to the top. He hits a knee strike, and then Josh applies the ankle lock. Hammerstone escapes. Then after that, Josh hits a boot. But Hammerstone gets up on his own, which was pretty badass. After that, we get a kick to the face of Hammerstone, and then we get a boot to the face of Hammerstone, and then Josh runs into him, picking up Josh Alexander. After that, we get repeated clotheslines into the corner. Hammerstone ends up selling his knee, but then Hammerstone runs into a power slam. Or I should say, Josh Alexander runs into a power slam by Hammerstone. After that, we get a cover and a near fall. Josh Alexander ends up going for the ankle lock applied on Hammerstone. But then Josh goes for repeated stomps. Then he applies it again, but then Hammerstone gets to the bottom rope. Josh ends up going for a waist lock, but then Hammerstone hits repeated back elbows. Hammerstone's leg gives out, but then Hammerstone picks him up. And then he hits the Nightmare Pendulum. And after that, it's too late to make the cover. Josh Alexander is on the apron, but then both men are on the apron. He picks up Alexander. Alexander escapes, but Hammerstone hits the Death Valley Driver. After that, Hammerstone is off the top, hits a drop kick, and then the TKO. And then we get a cover by Hammerstone and a near fall. Both men exchange elbows. After that, we get a rolling forearm by Josh Alexander. He goes for a second one. Hammerstone catches him, and then he goes for the German suplex into a sit-out powerbomb. These last few moments in the match were really intense. We get a cover and a near fall. We get an inside cradle by Josh Alexander and a near fall. We get a series of rights and lefts by Josh Alexander, followed by a forearm on the back of the neck of Alex Hammerstone. And then that opens the gate for Josh Alexander to end up hitting the C4 spike, which is basically a spike pile driver, on Alex Hammerstone. And we get a cover, and Josh Alexander, of course, the current walking weapon, gets the 1-2-3 in a great match. Of course, meat hitting on meat. Overall, I'm a big fan of Josh Alexander. Josh Alexander's work is great, dating back when he was in a tag team with Ethan Page as part of the North. Y'all remember that? Josh Alexander was in a tag team called the North with Ethan Page. But now, Josh Alexander has now developed himself as a singles guy, and he's been doing that for the past couple of years in Impact, and he's come a long way. Of course, he's a former Impact World Champion. Alex Hammerstone, I'm not really that familiar with him. I've been hearing a lot. I've been hearing his name all over the place, all over social media, but I haven't really took the time and go to watch any of his matches. But I've seen some clips, and the guy is really good, especially from his work in MLW. But from what it looks like right now, Alex Hammerstone is still a free agent, and this was just a booking. But if there's any chance, man, I do hope TNA does sign Alex Hammerstone because, again, he'd fit perfectly in TNA. Now, Fightful Select did post an update on Hammerstone. Hammerstone was quickly booked for the marquee match at the TNA Hard To Kill against the former Impact World Champion Josh Alexander, which is the match that just happened here. This led to natural inquisition about his contract status with the company, and Fightful has learned as of this week, as of course the week that was reported, Hammerstone hasn't signed a full-time deal with TNA, but there have been discussions regarding that possibility. Fightful has learned that there are some upcoming TNA signings to be announced that they have been working on, however, some of which were already booked for the weekend's event. So yeah, he's not currently signed to TNA yet, but hopefully, he ends up signing with TNA because I think, again, he'd fit like a glove perfectly in TNA. In AEW, he would have been lost in the shuffle like a lot of other big guys are lost in the shuffle in AEW. So, yeah. Moving on. We got a 4-way tag team match for the for the TNA World Tag Team Championships. I'm sorry, the X Division title is still stuck in my head. Whenever you think TNA, you think of the X Division. So we got ABC. They're part of Bullet Club, of course. Ace Austin and Chris Bay. All I really need is one shot. I love that theme song. Taking on the Rascalz, Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel. Taking on the Grizzled Young Veterans, formerly from the WWE, of course, James Drake and Zach Gibson. Taking on Mike Bailey and Lerado Kid. I believe Lerado Kid was a last-minute replacement. I completely forgot against two. But it was a last-minute replacement. But Mike Bailey, man. Mike Bailey, of course, recently, a couple months ago, came off that amazing match with Will Ospreay at Bound for Glory. If you guys haven't checked out the match that Will Ospreay had with Mike Bailey, I 100% recommend you guys to go watch that match. Just watch that match. It is heaven on earth. Please, just go watch that match. But Mike Bailey, I had the privilege of actually watching Mike Bailey wrestle live. It was a little over a year ago. It was at a Garden State Pro show. It was a local indie show that I went to, and Mike Bailey wrestled Alan Angels. It was a really good match. I remember I posted on social media, on Twitter especially, a video of him hitting a springboard moonsault on the outside, and that went viral like absolutely crazy. And Mike Bailey was like, "I call this Stadium Arcadium," something like that. So yeah, Mike Bailey is freaking awesome. Guy's great. One of the best wrestlers in the world today, in my opinion. In ring. I'm talking about from an in-ring standpoint. This match was hard to take notes on. And I say that because there was high spots all over the place. So if I mess up on any one of these spots, please forgive me because, again, everybody was all over the place. Ace Austin and Trey Miguel starts, but then Zach Gibson of the Grizzled Young Veterans tags himself in. But then Gibson and Austin start. James Drake makes the tag. He works on Austin. ABC goes for the double team, and then we get the double drop kick by ABC. And after that, Chris Bay is the legal man, but then the Rascalz come in, and then they go for the double team on Chris Bay. And then Lerado Kid and Mike Bailey are working on Trey Miguel. And then we get the forearm shot by Mike Bailey, followed by the head scissors by Mike Bailey. Everybody comes in to break the pin, but then the Grizzled Young Vets go after Lerado Kid and Bailey. After that, we get a series of rights and lefts kicks by Bailey on Gibson. We get a series of drop kicks by the Grizzled Young Veterans. Later on in the match, we get a tornado DDT by Lerado Kid on James Drake. And then Lerado Kid goes to the top. He ends up hitting a Michinoku driver off the top on Zachary Wentz. After that, we get a cover into near fall. Chris Bay and Ace Austin enter the fray. We get a double drop kick by ABC, followed by an insecurity by Ace Austin. Chris Bay ends up going for the torture wreck. Austin goes for a kick. After that, Bay hits the neck breaker. Great double team by ABC, and we get a cover and a near fall. We get a discus lariat by Chris Bay, and then they hit a knee strike, I believe, and then we get a kick by Bailey. And then Lerado Kid goes for a series of kicks. The Young Veterans come in. We get a cover by GYV, who are the legal men, and they could go for the cover, but we get a near fall. The Young Veterans are in control. Of course, we get the Doomsday Device on Zachary Wentz. We get a cover into near fall when Mike Bailey comes in. Lerado Kid goes for the double drop kick on the Grizzled Young Veterans off the top. We get a moonsault by Bailey off the top, and then Lerado Kid is on the top. James Drake comes in, and then Mike Bailey enters the fray. We get a Poison Rana. Yes, a Poison Rana by Mike Bailey off the top, which was crazy. And then we get a spinning kick, a.k.a. a tornado kick by Bailey on James Drake into the corner. We get, I think it was a 450 or 630 knee drop by Bayley. This guy is absolutely insane. And then we get a 450 by Lerado Kid on the outside. The Rascalz come in. Trey Miguel takes out Lerado Kid on the outside, but then we get a double stomp by Trey Miguel off the top. We get a cover into near fall when ABC come in. ABC and the Rascalz face off. Both teams fight it out. Then after that, they get the double super kick, and then ABC ends up winning the match, and they retain the TNA tag team titles. Overall thoughts on this tag team match. This was a great tag team match. ABC is absolutely phenomenal on all levels. This four-way tag team match was basically just action on all levels. Every guy in the match had a chance to shine, and there was a shit ton of high spots that were absolutely insane. And really, the majority of those high spots either had to do with Mike Bailey, Lerado Kid, or ABC, one of those two. But nonetheless, this was a great tag team match, and ABC are still your current TNA World Tag Team Champions. We got Trinity. Yes, Trinity, the former Naomi from WWE, defending her TNA Knockouts title against Jordynne Grace. This was a great match. I loved this match. Trinity looked like $1,000,000. She looked really good. Jordynne Grace really looked really good in this match as well. I kind of knew what was going to happen. I think everybody kind of knew what was going to happen. I mean, there was recently reports that, of course, Trinity's TNA contract was about to come up. It was a short-term thing with her and TNA, and Fightful was reporting that she's expected to return to the WWE. And if you think about it, after she lost the Knockouts title on this show, I think it's pretty safe to say that she's on her way back to the WWE. And honestly, it's great because, look, her husband's over there, so why not? But throughout the whole show, we've been wondering who was this mystery woman. And this mystery woman ended up being Dana Brooke. Her new name is Ash by Elegance. But Dana Brooke, be honest, I could care less. But let's go through Trinity versus Jordynne Grace. Both women lock up. We get a shoulder tackle by Jordynne Grace. We get a series of back and forth strikes by both women. We get a knuckle lock by both women, and then Grace gets Trinity up. Trinity escapes, and then we get a kick to the knee of Grace, but then we get a drop kick onto the face of Jordynne Grace. Grace then catches Trinity and drops her onto the mat. We get a cover and a near fall. Grace goes for a forearm shot on Trinity, and then we get an overhand chop by Grace. After that, Grace catches Trinity once again and hits a slam. We get a cover and a kick out. After that, we get a kick by Trinity. Trinity goes to the top, and then she hits a crossbody on Jordynne Grace. And then she drives her down using her knees. We get a cover and a near fall. We then get repeated shots onto the head of Trinity. And then we get a powerbomb by Grace, and then we get a rising knee strike by Jordynne Grace. Grace then drops Trinity face first down to the mat. We get repeated right hands by Trinity, and then we get a clothesline by Grace. After that, we get a tope suicida by Jordynne Grace, and then she ends up going for the Juggernaut Jackhammer on the outside. Trinity then hits a backdrop on the outside, but then both women are on the outside. Back in the ring, Trinity hits a kick. Grace wants her to hit harder, but then both women slap one another. Trinity ends up going for the enziguri, and then she ends up hitting the split-legged moonsault. We get a cover and a near fall. Grace applies the full Nelson, but then Trinity makes it to the ropes. Trinity goes to the top rope, but then Grace comes in. We get a headbutt by Trinity, and then we get a back fist by Jordynne Grace. Grace ends up going for the Muscle Buster. Shades of Samoa Joe, the current AEW World Champion, and of course a TNA alumni. We get a cover and a near fall. We get a series of roll-up reversals by both men, or both women, my apologies. Then we get a Trinity transitions into the Starstruck submission. After that, we get the rear view by Trinity, and then we get a cover and a kick out. Both women are on the apron, but then we get a high kick by Trinity, and then we get from what it looked like a heat seeker, a move that MJF would do from the middle rope. We get a cover and a kick out. And then we get repeated shots by Jordynne Grace. Now, granted, the Heat Seeker, I believe it happened on the outside. Like Trinity, that she was the one that was doing the move, that being the Heat Seeker-like move. She did it on the apron, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But Trinity goes for the sit-out powerbomb. We get a cover into near fall. And then she applies the Starstruck submission once again. But Grace, with her strength, powers her up. Trinity holds on to the ropes, but then we get a German suplex by Grace on Trinity. And then she goes for the spinning back fist and then goes for the driver. And we get a cover. And Jordynne Grace gets the 1, 2, 3 and wins the TNA Knockouts Championship. Overall, this was a very good match. Trinity never disappoints, in my opinion. Trinity looked absolutely phenomenal. And Jordynne Grace is your new champion. Now, again, as I've stated at the top of going through this match, there's been a lot of reports, especially by Fightful, that were reporting that Trinity is most likely expected to be on her way back to the WWE. Fun fact, actually, Mercedes Moné and Bayley were actually in the crowd. Not in the actual crowd, but like they were in their own little section at the Palms Casino Resort watching this whole match go down. We still do not know where Mercedes is going to be ending up. The most likely landing point for Mercedes Moné right now is AEW, but you never know. She could play us for a fool and she could end up signing with the WWE. Now with Trinity is interesting. She recently dropped the Knockouts title, and if there's any indication of Trinity knocking or dropping, I should say, the Knockouts title, I assume Trinity is 100% on her way out of TNA, and she's going to return to the WWE. And if that is the case, I applaud her, because of course when she went to Impact Wrestling, one of the things that Trinity wanted to do was she wanted to test herself to see if she's on the same level as all of these other women that are wrestling in the Knockouts division in TNA. And I think she has done a wonderful job of really proving herself in that ground. So I think a return to WWE can be really beneficial for someone like Trinity. Not only that, her husband works for WWE, of course, that being Jimmy Uso. So honestly, I think 100% Naomi is returning to the WWE. But when it comes to Mercedes Moné, I don't think it is the case. Moving on. In our final match, yes, our final match of the evening, Alex Shelley, one half of the Motor City Machine Guns, to take on Moose, the former Impact World Champion, actually former TNA World Champion, because he actually brought the TNA World Championship out of retirement a couple of years ago. Remember that? Alex Shelley, one half of the Motor City Machine Guns, to take on Moose for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. Overall thoughts on this match. This was a great main event. Absolutely loved this main event. Moose is a killer. I love that about Moose. Moose is a killer, bro. One of the best wrestlers in TNA right now. I just dig Moose. Moose, to me, is a badass. Alex Shelley. What is there bad to say about Alex Shelley? I'll tell the answer right now. There is nothing bad to say about Alex Shelley, because Alex Shelley is that damn good at what he does. But moving on, let's go through this match. Moose offers a handshake. Then Shelley shoves his hand aside, but then Moose shoves his head. Shelley spits water, so he really had this all planned out. We get repeated rights on Moose, and then we get a chop by Moose. Shelley then pushes Moose into the corner turnbuckle, but then Shelley works on his left arm. That is something that Shelley has been doing throughout the majority of this whole match. Of course, Moose was in kayfabe, I believe, injured. So basically, Shelley was kind of dominating throughout the majority of the middle of this entire match. Moose makes it to the bottom rope. Shelley's in control. Shelley then runs into a dropkick by Moose. And then Moose goes for a chop on Shelley on the outside. And then he bumps the head of Shelley onto the apron. And then we get a chop again by Moose on Shelley on the outside. Shelley tries to fight back. He hits a headbutt. Moose then body slams Shelley on the outside floor. But then Shelley works on the injured arm of Moose. And then he stomps on his elbow. But then we get a drop kick by Alex Shelley. And then we get a high kick on the head of Moose. And then we get a cover and a kick out. And then Shelley continues to work on his left arm. Shelley applies, of course, the Kimura lock submission. Of course, Moose then picks up Shelley, and then he throws him to the top turnbuckle face first. We get repeated right hands by Moose, And then we get a stomp onto the hand of Shelly. We get a series of overhand chops by Moose. And then Shelly proceeds to fight back once again. Moose ends up going for a Uranagi. And we get a cover ended kick out. And then we get a chop by Moose. And of course, she wants to hit him harder again. And then what happens, or he wants to hit him harder again. My apologies. I'm getting a little tired, ladies and gentlemen. It's actually 2:05 in the morning. Shelly then catches Moose. Shelly blocks. We get the enziguri by Shelly. After that, we get the pump kick by Moose. After the pump kick, Shelly then counters the powerbomb into a DDT. And then we get a running shotgun dropkick by Shelly into the corner. Then takes Moose, but Moose instead picks him up. And then Moose gets taken to the outside. We get the baseball slide by Shelly, sending Moose to the barricade. And then Moose then drops Shelly onto the apron. Shelly then tries to go for the sliced bread on the outside, but then he sends Moose to the ring posts. And then he tries to go for shell shock on the outside. Once Shelly's in the ring, Moose beats the 10 count, so he did not get counted out. After that, we get a cover by Shelly and a near fall. Then we get a kick by Shelly. Shelly then drops Moose face first onto the middle turnbuckle. We get a roll up by Shelly and a near fall. Shelly then goes for the forearm, and then we get a cover and another near fall. We get a crucifix pinfall by Shelly, and then we get a cover and another kick out. He tries to apply the Border City stretch, but we get a backslide, but Moose ends up countering into a powerbomb. We get a cover and a close-ass near fall. Moose then misses the spear, landing into the corner turnbuckle. Shelly then hits a lariat, but then Moose is still standing. We get the Uranagi countered by Shelly, and then he ends up hitting the sliced bread. Then D'Angelo Williams comes out with Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards. And then Chris Sabin and Kushida come out for the save and fight them off. Moose takes advantage. Moose lands on the ramp. He hits the Uranagi countered again by Shelly. And then we get a kick by Moose. And then he picks up Shelly. Shelly avoids it. And then he drops Moose on his bad arm, dropping him face first onto the ramp. We get a running kick on Moose in the ring. We get a series of overhand chops by Shelly. And then we get a chop by Moose. And then we get a series of chop exchanges by both men. And then he goes for a chop onto the back of Shelly. And then we get a rolling elbow. And then he kicks the head of Moose. But then Moose catches a kick. And what happens is we get a headbutt by Moose. And then we get a clothesline by Shelly taking down Moose. We get a bunch of TNA chants by the crowd. And at this point, the match is going intense. We get a super kick by Shelly. Shell shock countered. Counter after counter. But out of nowhere, Moose hits the spear. And we get a cover. 1, 2, 3. Alex Shelley's TNA World title reign is no more. Moose is your brand new TNA World Heavyweight Champion. After the match was over, what happens? Music plays, and it is none other than the wanted man himself, Nic Nemeth. Nic Nemeth, yes, Nic Nemeth. He comes out from behind Moose, and he hits a super kick, and then goes for the zigzag on Moose. And then he leaves from the crowd. He rips his shirt only to reveal the new shirt that says TNA Wrestling. Nic Nemeth, man. Nic Nemeth. We all know he made his New Japan Pro Wrestling debut at Wrestle Kingdom. Of course, he's targeting David Finlay for the IWGP Global Championship. But man, Nic Nemeth immediately targeting the world champion Moose gives me a lot of high hopes, man. In my opinion, I do believe Dolph Ziggler really should have gotten the just due that he really deserved, and I think he never got that. And now, since he is in TNA, I do believe he's finally going to get the respect that he deserves. I see a lot of people making comments of, oh my God, within 3 months, he's going to hold every championship in TNA, which is going to be hilarious, kind of like what Kurt Angle did back in 2007. But nonetheless, man, Nic Nemeth is a part of TNA. And honestly, that is a perfect fit for a guy like Nic Nemeth, of course, the former Dolph Ziggler. It is a perfect fit for Nic Nemeth. The reason why I say that is because of the fact that if he were to go to AEW, if Nic Nemeth, a.k.a. Dolph Ziggler, if he had gone to AEW, yeah, he would have teamed up with his brother, Ryan Nemeth. He would have teamed up with his brother, but that would have been all he would have been doing. Instead, he opted not to go to AEW, and from what it looks like, he's not on his way to AEW, and chose to go with TNA because he has a lot left to prove. But not only that, this guy wants to be a world champion. And the first guy that he targeted was Moose. I think it's as clear as day that within the next couple of months, Nic Nemeth is going to be your new TNA World Champion. But this was freaking awesome, man. Nic Nemeth, man. I'm digging this new character. I'm digging the wanted man type character. I mean, keep in mind, Nic Nemeth made his debut for TNA on this show. Battle in the Valley, of course, the New Japan Strong show. You had Jack Perry show up, attack Shota Umino, and rip up his AEW contract. Yeah, crazy, crazy, crazy times. Absolutely crazy times. It's insane. It's absolutely insane, man. Everybody is jumping from left and right, but you love to see it. But Dolph Ziggler, Nic Nemeth being a part of not AEW. I was about to say AEW. Oh my goodness, I'm getting tired. Of TNA is absolutely amazing, and I wish the best for Nic Nemeth, man, because he absolutely deserves it. And that concludes my TNA Hard to Kill review. Overall thoughts on TNA Wrestling's Hard to Kill. I enjoyed it, man. It was a great show. Yes, from a production standpoint, it was kind of similar to what Impact was already doing, but nonetheless, TNA Wrestling is back, and this has garnered a lot of interest within the fan base, and I think it's only going to get better when it comes to TNA Wrestling further on down the line in the future, because, again, TNA holds a special place in my heart. I do not know if I'm going to be covering the Snake Eyes show. I believe you can watch it live on TNA Plus. Is that true? Because I know they're going to be taping it, and they're probably going to be airing it on another Impact episode, or if you want to watch it live, you can watch it on TNA Plus. I'm going to have to wait and see about that, but Snake Eyes is definitely going to be an interesting show, considering we're going to be getting Will Ospreay versus Josh Alexander, and we're also going to be getting a lot of other stuff that happens on the Snake Eyes show. Of course, we got Kazuchika Okada, we got Vikingo on that show. Bro, Snake Eyes is going to be very interesting. Not only that, we got Nic Nemeth's first match announced, and he's going to take on Zachary Wentz of the Rascalz. So, yeah, be on the lookout for that. But yeah, that was my TNA Hard to Kill review. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. Look out for more videos right here on the Wrestle Havoc channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And, as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Rick, Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys all later. Peace.